On this video, we'll be discussing adding and subtraction with decimal fractions. Well, let's talk about some of the things that have been in the past or have led up to this point and talk about the keys to successful adding and subtracting. Well, first of all and foremost, we want to make sure that we add and subtract things that are the same size. Remember, with whole numbers, that meant lining up the places. With fractions, that meant that we had to go and look for a common piece called the common denominator so that the pieces would be the same when we added and subtracted. With decimals, we're going to make sure that we line up the decimal points, and that will bring everything into their proper place. Here's a sample problem. Notice the decimal points, and you would read this problem as 4.5 or 4 5/10 plus 0.096, or to read it correctly, 96 1,000ths plus 900ths. Well, when we set up the problem, it needs to look like this. And the central theme here, or the most important point, is to line up the decimal points. That gets the ones and the whole numbers on this side, the tenths all lined up, hundredths, thousands, and so forth. When you add, it's not necessary to put in the zeros and the empty spaces. I've just done it here to show what it would look like, because an empty space, when you're adding it, has no value, just a zero, so there won't be anything that needs to be added in that column. Well, let's just go ahead and do the addition, which is done exactly the same way as you would do whole numbers. When we add up the thousands place, we get 6. When we add up the hundreds place, we get 18. Well, the 8 can stay in the hundreds place, but the 10 hundredths form one group of a tenth, 1/10, plus 5/10 equals 6/10. And then the all-important positioning of the decimal point, and then we add up the 4 in the fours place, in the ones place. Okay, here's a sample subtraction problem. Notice how the decimal point in the first number has a 0. This is a whole number, one whole, and we're going to subtract from it something that might look like a larger value, but those of us that know something about decimals, we know that this is just a fraction of a whole. So this is the larger of the two values, and we'll go on the top. Okay, setting it up, originally it would look like this. But here it's very important to put in the zeros. If we don't put the zeros in, and we would just bring the 4 down, we really wouldn't be subtracting, we'd be adding. So you can see the situation here. We need to get some value into these spots in the top number. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, the same as we did with whole numbers. We go way over to the highest value, which in this case is just 1. But it's large enough to, if we take 1, there won't be anything left, but 1 equals 10 tenths. Now we can take one of those tenths, and remember, in this base 10 system, every time you take one of a larger place, it makes 10 of the smaller place. So if we take 1/10, it's going to leave 9 behind and give us 10 hundredths. We'll do the same thing again. We're going to take one of those hundredths, leaves 9, and that will give us 10 thousandths. And now we have enough value in this top number in all of the places to do our subtraction. 10 subtract 4 is 6, 9 take away 9 is 0, and in the tenths place, 9 take away 8 is 1. And of course the positioning of that decimal point is very important. Well, here's one you might want to try. Remember, even though it has 3 addends in it, it's still going to be done the same way. And of course with addition, it doesn't make any difference what order you put the numbers in. Just make sure, remember about the positioning of that decimal point. Okay, if you tried it and you're back with us, this is again a good time to use that composition paper and turn it so the lines are running vertically up and down. And let's write in our add-ins. The first one was this. Now notice that I've written the decimal point right on the line. If each one of these columns is a place. The decimal point is not a place. It's a division between, a fence almost, if you will, between two places. So we have the decimal point right on the line, and the places continue afterwards. And we're going to add to that 1.03, 0.901, and then finally 2.8. Now when we add them up, not necessary to put the zeros in, because here or not, it's still going to be the same. Okay, in the thousands place, we have a 1 as an answer. In the hundredths place, 3. And now here in the tenths place, when we add up 9 and 8, we get 17 tenths. Well, that's an improper fraction. If you remember our talk about improper fractions, the 7 can stay in the tenths place, but the 10 tenths, after we put the decimal point in, forms one whole, and now we add up the wholes and we get 4. Why don't we try this one? Set it up on your paper, and if you want to pause and come back and join us, we'll give you the explanation. Okay, on the paper this time, this will be the top number. Let's write it in, decimal point on the line, 3 tenths. We're going to subtract from that 0.036, which is 36 thousandths. Now we've got a problem here that we do not have any value here, so we need to get value. Let's put in the zeros first, and we're ready to go. All right, we go all the way over to the largest place, the tenths, and let's take one of those. That'll leave 2 now. And 1/10 equals 10 hundredths. All right, let's take one of those, leaves 9. And 1/100th equals 10 thousandths. Now we have enough value in the top places to do the subtraction. 10 take away 6 is 4. 9 subtract 3 is 6. And in the tenths place we get a 2. And let's not forget that important decimal point. Hopefully you remember from our discussion of whole number subtraction, and this subtraction is done the same as whole numbers except for the positioning of the decimal point, that you can add the bottom number plus the answer, the difference, and you should come back up to the top number. Remember, the top number originally was 0.3. We put the zeros in. That didn't change anything. It just gave it a different look. Well, let's do that. Let's add up these two values and see if we don't get that top number. We practice our addition at the same time here. Okay, in the thousands place, that would be 10. Well, 10 thousandths equals 1/100th, so we bring it over here. Adding up the hundredths, we get the same situation. 10 hundredths equals 1/10. Now that gives us 3 tenths. Let's not forget the decimal point. And you can see what happened. It did match. So these two zeros can be eliminated. 0.3, 0.300, same thing. So that check works once again, even with decimals. Well, let's do a quick summary of what we talked about on this video. This is a short video. And here's what we said. When you add and subtract, don't forget to line up your decimal points. When you do the subtraction, add the zeros if needed to the top number. Remember, you're going to have to borrow, so the zeros will help make those values accurate. And then the last thing, just remember, when you add and subtract decimals, you're doing it the same way as you did with whole numbers.